Hello, everybody, and welcome to Geopolitics in Conflict Show. Ross is here.
Hello, everybody.
Yeah, decided to come with me for this live. So, we're gonna do this live together today. So that's what we're gonna be doing. So, anyway, good to see you guys as always. And I truly enjoyed the conversation with you yesterday because there were some comments that I was reading through, and some of our viewers were kind enough to put some super stickers for us. So,
Oh,
I
nice.
want to thank
Thank
you
you.
for that. We appreciate it. So, what are we talking about today, Ross?
Are the Solomon Islands perhaps the next conflict zone?
Like we didn't have enough. Well, indeed. Actually, Australia, the United States, Australia and the United States are stepping up now the diplomatic efforts regarding the Solomon Islands because the argument is that China is about to build a military base there. So that's what we're gonna delve into. As I always do, guys, with you when I'm by myself, I'll provide a conclusion, then with the question of the day. And by the way, Ross, I always put a question for our viewers for me to have the discussions with. And the question yesterday had to do with how the global trade is going to be moving forward. And majority answer with yes and yes to two questions.
Okay.
And I couldn't agree more because it was as accurate. So let's talk about Solomon Island and why is that very important to for you guys just to understand where the dynamics are headed. And like I always say, yeah, to understand geopolitics, Ross, we have to do what? Put it in a frame. Because the frame provides us an insight into what to expect.
Yeah, not an isolated incident, but the frame of everything is connected to everything. And an important part of this is, well, hold it. Where are the Solomon Islands located?
Yeah, you're right. That begs the question of why all of a sudden there is this important drive by the West regarding the Solomon Island. Well, let's first provide what's at issue here. Well, what's at issue is that as the Solomon Islands and China signed the security pact, the agreement, and by which they're going to cooperate on the security matters.
What a concept!
Yeah,
You mean the government of Solomon Islands is actually looking to to have security for its people with its two biggest neighbors?
yeah, exactly. And this is why Australia went ahead and sent two of its intelligence officers. Those are high-ranking ones, because Australia also has a pact with the Solomon Islands. So what's his name? I gotta get his name here. The Prime Minister for the Solomon Island. Yeah, his name is Sakovari. And he did issue a clarification to the Parliament.
A very vigorous
Yeah.
one.
And basically, he argued, and I quote here because it was his words here, that the security treaty is pursued at the request of the Solomon Island government. We are not pressured. We are not present in any way by our new friends, and there is no intention whatsoever. And there is no intention whatsoever, Mr. Speaker, to ask China to build a military base in Solomon Islands. We are insulted by such unfounded stories. End of quote.
That sounds pretty definitive to me.
Yeah. Well, it's because Australia is saying that China is about to build a military or naval base there. The U.S. now is arguing that there could be a problem there for this pact between Solomon Island and China. They end up building a naval base. So, and the prime minister of the islands is saying no. We did sign the treaty, or they did sign the pact with China,
Right.
but they made it clear. The Solomon Islands made it clear to China that there will be no military presence whatsoever, and they agreed.
Well, what we have again is let's cause upheaval, let's cause fear.
Yeah.
Let's get people all upset about, well, maybe it's possible that they might do something sometime in the future that would hurt Australia. Well, that's not very definitive. That's not very declarative. And something linguistically called a generalization, which doesn't say anything.
It's just bravado, loud noise.
It's loud noise to stir up a person's emotions.
Yeah.
We need to fear that China will put a military base on the Solomon Islands.
Yeah. Well, this is why the Prime Minister Manasseh Sagavari, he pushed back against this one. This is why it kind of didn't make any sense for the arguments as to why Australia and New Zealand all of a sudden, because those are the ones leading the pack. Now, and let's be fair, because we always have to be fair. One could argue that Australia has concerns. Why? It's because of the location of the Solomon Islands.
Absolutely right.
Yeah, that's a legitimate concern. If I were a head of state or prime minister, I will be concerned with that kind of arrangement, shall we say. The other concern that the United States has is that the Solomon Islands is close proximity to Guam.
Oh, yeah.
What do we have in Guam? We have
our
major presence.
Yeah.
This whole area. This is why I believe personally, Ross, that let's hope it doesn't happen. But if there is a next conflict in that part of the world, it's going to be very challenging because the presence of water always makes a big difference there. And this is where I see the challenge that's going to be going on for the Solomon Islands moving forward. So, because if there is this now push from the West against the Solomon Islands as far as and at the same time, aren't they a sovereign state, sort of islands? So they deserve to.
It's like we'll pay lip service to their sovereign state, but we need to fear what's going on, what possibly could go wrong there, and we need to take definitive action as if they're not a sovereign state.
Yeah.
And you take a look at the agreement itself with China, and isn't it pretty clear that they said no military base?
They did state that one. I looked at the I did look at the arrangements that they had. If I may just look at here quickly, and it did say that the Chinese government has rejected claims that it intends to use its MOU, the Memorandum of Understanding, with the Solomon Islands as a way of augmenting its military presence in the Pacific. According to the Chinese Ministry of Foreign Affairs, the MOU, the Memorandum of Understanding, contains no military overtone. So it tells me right there.
From what I can tell from this document, it says we're going to agree that we're going to be friendly to each other.
Yeah.
Not much beyond that.
Yeah. And this is where, because this whole hypes is coming out of from Australia and New Zealand. Well, Australia already in a bad situation anyway, given what took place with the AUKUS. And second, with the nuclear submarine, the fiasco of that. Basically, what the Morrison government ended up doing is turning Australia upside down, economically speaking.
That's not the only way.
Yeah, no, because we just remember when we had our member from Australia that shared the information with us that basically the economy is tanked. What the government's saying versus what it is are two separate things.
And we did a show on it and said what the Australian government is just absolutely lying to its people. And we had the facts, the figures, and the research to back that up.
Yeah, you're absolutely correct. But here is the irony, Ross. And the irony is that even Australia itself, it has a pact with Solomon Islands. This signed back in 2017. So why nobody said anything? What if Australia will end up building a military base there? But nobody even made the argument. China didn't make the argument. Philippines didn't make the argument. So what's the issue? All of a sudden, because now Solomon Islands decided to sign the pact with China, all of a sudden
we have to have a new conflict.
Yeah, we have to.
Ukraine's going to blow over sometime.
Yeah.
And we have a potential. Maybe it's a preparation for what's coming with
Taiwan. That's correct. There is potential for that possibility. But here is the thing, and this is putting my geopolitical analyst hat on. The idea, the idea that I think the arrangements between the Solomon Island and China may have to do with the Belt and Road Initiative, because there is already a conversation right now between China and Thailand
Oh, yeah.
about some port. I think it's called Q1. I can't pronounce that one, so pardon me. So,
But it's a port.
it is port.
It's a port.
That's what
port
it
in
is.
Thailand.
That's what matters.
Yeah.
Port that's going to hold volumes,
Yeah, right.
But that is the idea of this. Could it be because of that? That's a possibility to it. Could it also be that the Solomon Island is being proactive into what lies ahead? It's almost like I feel they are looking over the horizon for the next trouble spots coming regarding Taiwan,
Yes.
and they wanted to prepossession themselves. That's a possibility. If you think from those angles, there is that possibility for it. So, and this is why I kind of all of a sudden didn't understand. All of a sudden, there's these tensions in Solomon Island that they just started about 2.5 weeks ago. All of a sudden, this becomes a very concerning as to now there will be a buildup of a Chinese military base. But here's the thing, that the United States made the argument for that, because that reminds me back of the visit by a former general for the Marines back to Australia in 2019, if I remember correctly. And the conversation in Australia was about the Solomon Island at that time. And to me, it became clear that Australia has no say. Australia is being told what to do.
You don't mean they're a puppet government?
Oh no! But the idea of Australia, it doesn't have a backbone anyway. But we already said this a couple of times ago. But the idea of this arguments that the West is making, I have to counter that argument, and the way I counter that argument by providing an example where such arrangements exist elsewhere. And what am I talking about? I'm talking about Djibouti. Well, Djibouti, I've been there, and I saw with my own eyes. There is the presence of both U.S. naval presence and China naval presence. As a matter of fact, Japan also has some presence there. No, so here is both China and the U.S. exist in Djibouti, but also because Djibouti is strategically located with access to the Indian Ocean. So could it be the same thinking that exists for why the West is nervous about this pact between Solomon Island and China? What do you think, Royce?
I think it's much to do about nothing.
So just hype.
It's hype. I keep coming back to this. Who creates a conflict with their biggest trading partner, who has essentially for 20 some years brought a relative level of prosperity to your country?
Yeah.
And how do you spend $90 billion on submarines to spy on or to protect yourself from your biggest trade partner who says, we love to trade with you. We love your products. Can we give you more money? You go,
Yeah.
okay.
Well, they shut down that door. China shut down that door. So,
Well, of course they did.
yeah. So there is another argument, Ross, that Western intelligence agencies, mainly the ones in Australia and New Zealand, but the US to a degree, that they've been arguing that Solomon Island has flipped in its stance because it was recognizing Taiwan before. Now it changed its possession after they signed the deal before they signed the deal with China, the argument. And the intelligence agencies from Australia saying that, well, no, there've been some bribe, that China has bribed some. I do not know that for fact. And if it were the case, we will say so. And I intend to look into that to see if indeed it was some money that changed hands. You can't take the word for the intelligence services saying that without facts.
Well, what we have is the Prime Minister of the Solomon Islands vehemently denying that money changed hands. At least no money went into his hands.
That is correct, and that is one part of where that argument is regarding was this true for what they are saying just because some intelligence agencies said so, that means it must be true. Well, that's not the case. We all know history
Right.
uses examples. The Iraq War, for example,
Yeah.
was certain. You don't jump to conclusions right away till you check the facts, and this is what they've been saying, that the idea of for Solomon Island to switch recognition of Taiwan to the recognition of the Republic of China.
Oh yeah.
That's where the big switch, basically, from a recognition of Taiwan to recognition of the People's Republic of China. That's to them where they're saying, well, there was some bribes going on. I do not know. I don't have the.
Well, all the Solomon Islands was doing is complying with what everyone else in the world has already done.
Yeah.
Saying, okay, well, Taiwan is actually a province of China.
Yeah, and plus Solomon Islands is a sovereign entity that they can recognize whomever they want, and they can switch recognition from whomever they want.
Exactly.
The one thing that they have not been pressured for that, based at least on the documents we saw. So we can be assuming what the media is saying is accurate.
You know, I have some questions about how important is the Solomon Islands to anybody? And I don't have any idea about it. They're a poor country.
Mm-hmm.
They're small. They're spread out. They're politically diversified.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a lot of internal bickering going on constantly inside the government. Going, okay, why are they getting all this attention?
Well, yeah, you're absolutely correct, Russ. But the idea of the geographical location of the Solomon Island is very, very important. I can understand also both sides of the arguments. Because as I said, should they bear attention in that vicinity, in that area, Australia will be cut off. They will be cut off from anything because. It won't be feasible for them to manage any conflict with any major power.
So all of a sudden it does become important.
Yeah.
If China does decide to put a major military base there, it really could harm Australia.
Yeah.
Could.
It could. That's
conditional.
True. It could.
Although we have no information that says it's going to.
Yeah.
Matter of fact, we have information that says it's not going to.
Yeah.
But if it does, we get it. It is all of a sudden becomes important to Australia.
At the same time, the Solomon Island can allow other countries like Australia itself to establish a base if they want it. They said they don't want any military presence. They will enter into a pact with other countries like they did with Australia in 2017, like they just did with China. But they made it clear that they will not allow any military presence. So if you want to sign a deal with them, you got to adhere to their request for that. Otherwise, it will be no deal to begin with. And this is, but geostrategically, it's very important given now what's going on, what's coming up on the horizon with the tensions that exist, and with the U.S. has already been shifting its attention to regarding the Taiwan issue. And I kind of convinced that in the Taiwan scenario, it will be very complicated to assume, a very complicated one as far as how it's going to be managed. And second, for Taiwan to assume that Australia or Japan or the US is going to come to their aid. That will be a big miscalculation. We're already witnessing that in some other parts of the world. So,
oh boy, you aren't kidding.
And speaking of Japan, while I'm thinking about it, the idea of Japan in support of Taiwan because they've been ordered to.
We also know that they controlled it for what, 50 years or something?
Yeah.
And so, and there's a lot of, in Taiwan, there's a lot of Japanese architecture. And I don't know if there's any Japanese people still there, but somehow some groups in Japan think they still own it.
Yeah.
Just because they had it for 50 years and lost it in a war.
Yeah, it doesn't mean well, that was the same thing some of our viewers posted the last time when I made a comment about the island, the one's intentions between Japan and China. No, well, of course, certain reports coming from Japan indicated that they belong to Japan. Well, the history, I looked into that, and yes, there is a record for it that it goes back before even 1894. That's how far back it goes. Would the island belong to China? No. Of course, is what happened. And one of our viewers was accurate in his description regarding what the McNamara era did regarding the islands. That's what Japan after World War II. So it was very, very interesting dynamics. The history is very complicated. It's not an easy thing to decipher easily.
Recently, I've been taking a deep dive into what's going on in Taiwan.
Mm-hmm.
And you might notice the language they speak. Oh, it's Mandarin. Oh, you might notice the ethnicity of the vast majority of the people. Oh, it's Han. And they identify them, 40% of them or plus identify themselves as citizens of mainland China. The others, not so certain about that.
Yeah. I always wonder, Russ, you read a little bit of history about Taiwan and all that.
Oh, yeah.
Do you think that China and Taiwan would be reunited peacefully?
I think it's inevitable.
Huh?
And the reason is because the Chinese economy continues to boom. And we have 10% of the Taiwanese workforce working in mainland China because of the career opportunities.
Yeah.
And if Taiwan is going to continue economic growth, economic prosperity, they have to have connections with mainland China. And something that goes on behind the scenes that most people don't really know about is the connection of the families. Oh, families in China?
Yeah.
And how so many families actually rule what goes on in various places. Well, the family connections between Taiwan and mainland China are sometimes the deciding factors. But you never hear about those things.
Of course, yeah, you won't.
But that is the case.
Yeah.
And the vast amount of trade that goes on between those two.
And they're only going to get even stronger as far as where things are headed, economically speaking, given that now, I'm sure you're aware of you and I have been discussing this stuff, the idea of the financial structure that now is being pushed by China, Russia, India, Pakistan, Turkey. And speaking of Turkey, while I'm remembering, I made a mistake yesterday when I talked about the Russian S-400 missile system, that Turkey was the only country. No, China also purchased the S-400 missile system. So China and Turkey, both of them have the S-400 system, and soon to be India. Yeah, you can see where this is going. And this is why, from a financial perspective, like I talked about it yesterday, is the idea that, it will make perfect sense for that peaceful reunification between China and Taiwan instead of forced one. The question that I ask myself is how far the West will be willing to go in support of Taiwan. To what end, to what degree they're going to stop.
2 weeks ago, I was talking to someone from Taiwan.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, what's the story here? And here's what this person said. Very smart, very well-educated person. Said, the government in Beijing looked at us as a province and pretty much allowed us to do whatever we wanted to, as long as we did not claim independence of our own nation or trouble for Beijing. Well, that's not what happened. It seems that some outside influences came in who will remain unnamed outside influences, and started stirring this all up. And so Beijing had to take a stand where they were just letting them alone. And Taiwan was doing remarkably well.
Yeah.
And now we even see that the chip manufacturers have been moved out of Taiwan, because that was a major source of income for them, and moved to Arizona.
Yeah. I heard about that one. Yeah. And even was the argument about the someone sometimes said, well, you can call somebody a president because they refer to Tsai, President Tsai, because if you do president, that means it's a sovereign
Nation.
entity. Yeah, well, it's not. except that that title has been on the roll for a while, but that does not mean that the Taiwan is a sovereign state, because if it is a sovereign state, it will have to have its own representation, its own diplomatic representation, and so forth. And it does not.
Well, let's talk out of both sides of our mouths.
Yeah,
We clearly
we
recognize. Now we know that
We-
China is part of mainland. Come on.
Yeah, you're absolutely correct, Ross. And there was the arguments that many have said that now, given the shift in the global landscape, how far the West will be willing to push, and I think it will be a dangerous. It's almost on the cliff of, it's over for everybody, because it will be no winner, because we don't know what it means. And this is where my big concern is, how far they're pushing regarding the Taiwan issue. To me, the Solomon Islands, it's an indication of it. Because I'm questioning, why all of a sudden Australia, despite the problems they have economically, all of a sudden now having to go to Solomon Islands, send their law enforcement, and what for?
One thing, distraction, and we know that governments are fabulously good at distracting the people away from the real issues by false issues. And the second is continuing fear mongering, and we seem to be seeing it all over the West.
Yeah, it's pushing too much for that, And I think now, if Solomon Island, which already, it's not if, they already took a stand on that it's a sovereign state. They can decide whatever they want. They can trade with whomever they want. They can buy weapons from whomever they want. The question is always like, who gives a right to one sovereign state to dictate to another sovereign state what to do?
It might be called exceptionalism.
Oh,
but we won't save the country that's guilty.
Yeah,
This goes on and on.
You're absolutely correct. So, well, let me give a conclusion here quickly, and I'll give you a question of the day, as we always do. All right, here's the thing. That now there's some Western nations, including US, New Zealand. Go ahead, Ross.
Okay, New Zealand, Australia, United States, possibly Great Britain, and Canada. Who else?
Well, you know who they are.
We know.
UK and Canada are nothing but whatever the master says.
Right.
They have to bow.
Puppet states.
Japan included, and Australia included. So what their argument is that they are very concerned. Didn't we hear that before?
Much to do about nothing.
Yeah.
Okay, we got it.
So they're saying that they consider the possibility that China might end up using the agreement between Beijing and the Solomon Islands to build a military. That's their argument, the military base in Solomon Islands. So, and because also, of course, we understand the strategic location of the Solomon Islands. As I said earlier, closer to Guam, U.S. has a presence in Guam. So you can just see where Australia and New Zealand will be like, okay, the masters say we're going to have to
create fear and conflicts. Okay.
Yeah, this is where the issue that I see. So, but so far the idea of both countries, the Solomon Islands and the Chinese, if they sign the pact, they sign the pact. So who are we to dictate to them to the islands what to do?
And from what we can tell, it's so simple. Let's be friends.
Yeah.
Okay. I need to be afraid of that kind of a pact?
Yeah.
Come on.
You're right. But to me, that's an indication, Ross, for the changes that's taking place within certain global hegemon, that when you start to see erratic policies, when you start to see fragmented approaches to global issues, when you start to see just a push towards chaos, that tells me right there, you got nothing of substance as far as how to conduct foreign policy, how to deal with foreign countries, how to know your place within the international system. It's because, let's just face it, things have changed.
Quite dramatically.
Yeah. Gone the era where, for example, one superpower can dictate the terms for the rest of the world. So it's coming to an end. So here is a question for you for the day, guys. And of course, as I always say, the purpose of it is for us to have a conversation here. So do you think that China and the US end up building, China and the US end up building a military presence on the Solomon Island, similar to the arrangements in Djibouti? I repeat, do you think China and the US end up building a military presence on the Solomon Island in a similar arrangements to the one in Djibouti? I hope you find this information very useful and look forward to seeing you next time. As always, guys, stay informed. Till next time. Bye-bye.